surely there's books where it's like, yeah, I'm sucking on Fate's dick. That I got railed by Fate the other day. Like
Yep.
that exists. Hi, I'm Allie.
And I'm Sam, and this is the Knit Ritz podcast.
Hey, this week we're talking fated mates, which is going to be a fun trope discussion. First, let's discuss. Let's start with a writing check-in, and because what did you write this week?
0 words.
Nice. You'll get there one of these weeks.
Yeah, I'm in a writing lull.
Yeah.
Not really sure how to claw. It's not like a writer's block. I got stuff to write, but it's just the the doing of the writing. I just can't.
Yep.
I just can't right now.
Yeah.
So I've got thoughts. I got a little overwhelmed with like how much my story needs work and how much my like writing is becoming a craft and how shitty I know things are right now and how much I'm going to have to sort of fix that and kind of work out plot holes and stuff. And so I think I got a little overwhelmed. Sorry, you could hear my husband cleaning the kitchen in the background. But yeah, I have thoughts, I have ideas. I just need to sit and have like a moment where my brain power and my hand power can physically do it. But I just haven't been in that space.
Yeah. Well, maybe what you want is actually like a brain. Maybe what you want is actually like a side story. Like just say I'm just writing to practice writing for fun,
Yeah.
because I've had a lot of fun with those. I have arguably too many now, but maybe that's what you need to do so that you just get like more of like, a lot of writing is just kind of practicing
Yeah.
getting yourself to do it.
Mhm.
Um a little different for you because you like write a whole chapter at once, which is
Yeah.
crazy. But
Uh-huh.
maybe you should just have like a for fun story,
Yeah, and
and
I need to also give myself a break
um
and like just be like
mhm.
just write 500 words. You could just keep going. It doesn't have to be a chapter.
Yeah,
Just go.
yeah,
I get into a
yeah,
space where I'm like I kind of know what I want to get done. Um
yeah.
and then if that doesn't get done, I get like really crazy hyper focused and then
Hmm.
so yeah, I'm
Yeah,
like, "Oh, I need to carve out like 2 hours." And I'm like, "No, you can carve out 30 minutes, Sam. Like just put some words on a page. It's fine."
yeah. I was listening to one of those Brandon Sanderson talks, and he was talking about how, oh yeah, I usually write for like 3 or 4 hours. The first hour you're hardly writing; it's like a 200 word hour, and then you do 1,000 words the next hour. And I was like, what?
Kind of,
No,
yeah.
no, I
Mhm.
related zero to that. I'll write 700 words in 20 fucking minutes, and then I'm done for the day.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm the opposite.
Like,
I'll sit for, like, 30, 40 minutes and, like, get a couple sentences and be mulling it over, and then I'm like, "Okay, I got it," and then it's, like, the next hour, I'm just, like, going, going, and then I just ride that
that's
to the end of the
crazy.
chapter.
I
Yeah.
can't. Yeah, that is so crazy. No, I will spit out 1,000 words in like 40 minutes. But then I'm like toast, and I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I do kind of get like a moment at a time.
Mhm.
But most of the time I actually, I pants in that way, but I
Mhm.
also make myself like most nights I try and just put I always write in bed, so
Mhm.
I will go get in bed. I only don't write if I'm working until late or like doing other shit until I'm too tired or it's too late. But yeah, so I'll get in bed and I'll take my laptop and I'll just like let's see what I can come up with in like a few minutes, and then that's what I do. So
Yeah.
like I think I wrote like 3 or 4 times this week, and I got 1,200 words. I got
Nice.
a big scene that I thought was stupid and shitty, and then I made Caleb read it to tell me if I should just scrap the whole thing. He was like, "No, this is cool," and I was like, so it's
Yeah.
not like the lamest thing you've and I was very like self-conscious about it because it's like, it's like a big moment, and I just feel like there's so many ways for that to be lame that
Yeah.
that kind of, but he was like he liked it and thought it was interesting, so I was like, all right, I'll keep it.
That's how I
But I
feel
need to
about
kind of do more.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I have a like a kind of a baby battle scene, and I'm
Hmm.
like, there's not enough words to really talk about what's happening here. Like that wrapped up too quickly. There's like very little like it. Just for me, and like
Hmm.
I go back and it's like 5-ish pages, 4-ish pages, whatever, and I'm like, that's not terrible. But
Yeah.
I'm like,
I think battle scenes are quicker than people remember them. Like people
mhm,
think, "Oh, that was that big battle," and then you look at it, it's like 2 pages,
yeah,
and it's just because the nature of a battle scene moves way quicker
yeah,
than like usually. It's like you don't put the pensive thoughts because you're like,
yeah,
we're in a battle. You want it to feel like
hmm,
that, so it's much quicker pace. Like that's why we didn't have as much to say about the first trial.
yeah,
Um, Wrong podcast, whatever. Uh,
hmm, hmm,
but like we didn't have as much we never talk about chapters that are like a battle scene like Feyre's first
yeah,
trial because there's very little not retrospect. What am I saying?
introspective.
Reflection or
Yeah,
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 introspection.
yeah.
So I think that makes sense, but yeah.
Reading? What are you reading?
Oh yeah, so I was reading I mean, I am reading Outlander, but I got mad at at the second book because it's okay. It's one of these things. I guess spoilers for Outlander. I feel like you're not going to read it, especially yeah. Um,
I mean, I will someday, sure, but like not when I still remember this
yeah,
conversation,
you
I'm
won't
sure. So,
remember. Yeah. Okay, so basically, the whole thing's about like this time travel, right? And she's like from the 1940s, she goes back to the 1740s on accident, and ultimately in the first book, she decides she's not going back. She can't go back. She can't leave this person that she's met and she's in love with, right? So she's gonna stay in the 1740s, but she also knows what's gonna happen in the 1740s. This big massacre, and all like the Scottish Highlander tribes are gonna like get killed. Um, and so anyway, so she's like warning them. The first book ends with them like being like, "We gotta go," and sort of like we're gonna try to change history essentially. And she's like,
mhm,
"Let's do this." Um, but then the second book, so and then the preview and the end of the first book is of them together. But then the actual start of the second book is her in 1960, and she's been back in the world in her time for 20 years and brought her kid from that guy in the 1740s through, and she's now like 20, and I hate it so much because A, that means that person was never got to see his kid.
mhm,
B, it means like she left while pregnant, so she must I don't know. And I think what's going to happen is that they're going to go back and change that.
mhm,
But that basically just means that I'm fucking annoyed, and I'm gonna
mhm,
be annoyed the whole time because now I'm probably gonna hate it unless they change it. But then I know that they're gonna change it because I'm like, who in their right mind would leave it like this? So it has to
mhm.
be a change. So then it feels like I know exactly what's gonna happen, and there's nothing surprising, and it's pissing me off. Um, but it
Uh-huh.
might still be like beautiful or nicely done. But I'm just like, I don't like knowing the ending. I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
So there's something that's just fucking driving me crazy about the way that that book
Mhm.
started. Like, it like made me mad. I was like, "Fuck you." So I haven't read it in a couple days, but I will pick it back up. I did start playing Silent Hill, um, with
Okay.
Kel, and but I don't know if we're gonna keep playing that, but I count that as reading. It's a very interesting story. And then I
Yeah.
just read a bunch of fucking essays. What about you?
I'm reading Air of Fire. So I finished the rest of Crown of Midnight. So I finished the rest of I took like a few day break from Crown of Midnight. Because I was reading to my husband and recapping, and then he wasn't keeping up, and so I was like, well, I'll pause, and then I was like, fuck it, we're just gonna read. So I finished that book, and I am now halfway through Air of Fire, and am loving the reread and theorizing and just sitting in the mass verse over here. So yeah,
Mhm.
so that
Yeah.
is what I have been doing, hmm and trying not to feel like shit. So Fated Mates.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't read very many things. I know it's a
Hmm,
classic in the genre, so I'm sure actually people, if we ever have listeners, they will be like probably with lots of opinions. I
hmm,
think it's interesting for sure.
hmm.
Yeah, what are you're the kind of the expert here.
I I like it. Um, I feel like it has its pros and its cons though. When I think it outside of taking like just taking it as a trope and just discussing it as a trope outside of how it actually shows up in the books, I
Mhm.
think sometimes it feels a little, or it could feel like, well, now we know they're just gonna be together for fucking ever,
Yeah.
right? And like, like anytime that there's like conflict or whatever, that like there's this extra sort of outside force. Um,
Mhm.
so I can see how that could be something where you're like, really? Like, why can't it, like, why does it have to be like that or whatever? But yeah, so I kind of like playing with the idea of like fate versus like free will, and
Mhm.
like even if it's not necessarily fated mates, like the coincidences of life that lead you to where you're gonna be or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
So I like it, but I do think that sometimes if the notion of mates is introduced too early in a story, and it's really easy to be like, oh, well, this is the main female character, and like this is clearly going to be the love interest, and I
Mhm.
know that there's fated mates, so like clearly that's what this is going to be. I think sometimes that makes it feel a little cheap. Um, but
Yeah.
I'm into it. I like when they have
I can ima
other relationships before they meet their mate, though.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, because then it's not it feels, like, too easy, like, okay, just first chapter, you met your mate, and you're gonna be with them for 6 books now. Yeah, it's nice when there's a little switch up. Um I do think,
Yeah.
like, it's interesting. Okay, I think the danger of it could be that, like, once you have if the fated mates is, like, a part of the story, I think it's more interesting, but I think a lot of times it becomes, like, the main conflict, and then you either
Hmm.
have, "How are we going to accept that we are fated, that we have to be together?" Verse
Hmm.
or it's like, "Oh, the author's trying to comment on the power of free will over whatever and how you can change destiny, and now it's
Hmm.
just a thing about, 'I'm not gonna be with you,' and we're saying something," like, it's kinda like it just feels
Yeah.
like I don't know, it feels a little bit, like, contrived. It can be interesting, but it feels like you almost have to turn it on its head, which in a
Hmm.
way is sort of contrived because 'cause you're like, "Okay, because I'm using this trope, I have to turn it on its head or I have to
Hmm.
embrace it," and then I don't know. So, but I like it when it's
Yeah.
an aspect and, like, there's a different conflict, and it just adds an interesting moments of conflict as opposed to the central conflict.
So I've wrestled with the idea of fated mates versus like chosen mates. The idea of it being like solely fate mated, or if it's like a choice situation where you can sort of create this bond by choice, or if there's like a hybrid of the two where like there is such a thing as fated mates, but that there's also this level of acceptance and choice that goes into it. Um so yeah, that's like my wrestling with how to use it. Do I stick with like just a straight it's fated from whatever, right? Solely fated
Mhm,
mates, very strong bond, yada yadas. Or if there's this aspect of choice where you can choose your mate and that sort of creates a bond. Or if there's like, you know, there is fated mates, but there's this acceptance level to it where like it has to be consummated, I guess is usually how it goes. I want it to be more than just like they have to bang it out for it to work, but
mhm,
I think that there should be like this, choice in the matter. Or if there's
mhm,
going to be kind of a hybrid of it. Because for me, I have some characters that I'm very much like, oh, fated mates works for them. And then I have characters where I would love to see it be a little bit more like Bryce and Hunt. But yeah, so like, and so then I have another character set who like I want it to be a little bit more like Bryce and Hunt, where there's more of this like discussion and a choice. And then like
yeah,
there's a solidification, or there's like, oh, we were always fated mates, and so the choice to do this was like blah 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 whatever else. So I
mhm,
haven't
mhm,
quite figured out like the mate system in the book, like in the series that I want to write. um
mhm,
because again, one couple seems very much like, oh, that's a fate thing, their magic is compatible and balancing, and they're equals and yada yadas. um but yeah, so and then I have two other characters who like they have that like friend to lovers to enemies to lovers situation, and
mhm,
I want it to be like they are fated mates, but there was this thing that happened and so they are not together, And then when they get back together, they have this whole conversation about like, this is who I want you to be, whatever. And that somehow like solidifies it, but I just haven't figured out exactly what, I just haven't like canonized it, I guess.
Yeah. Which is fine. I think that's, you don't really have to for a while, but yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want it to just be like, because I've seen a lot of them where it's like you find your mate, but until you like have sex, it's not
Mhm.
bonded, right? It's not like
Yeah.
fulfilled. And I mean, that's kind of, I think, how SJM's mating situation works. There's like a
Yeah. Well, it
consummation
does say
of,
accept,
yeah.
you
But
know,
usually the
the
acceptance
food.
comes through some sort of physical activity. Um,
Yeah.
that's how it works. So one of the series that I was talking about the last few weeks, the Bonded by Thorns, the Wolves of the Briar,
Oh yeah.
whatever, Beasts of the Briar series, theirs has to be consummated, although there is sex that happens before then and the mate bond doesn't solidify.
You
So
have to
like
like have the knowledge and
yeah.
yeah.
And it's also like heightened. So one kind of snaps halfway into place because like it's heightened when the mates are in peril or like life threatening, and so then the bond kind of
Mm,
snaps initially, and then it's like fortified through accepting the bond and like doing the thing.
mhm.
And then the same thing. So what lies beyond the veil? That's a mated series as well. And that one they have all sorts of sex, but they have to have sex in a specific spot in a specific like
Mm,
ritualistic sort of nature for the bond to solidify. So we're on book like fucking 4, and their mate bond isn't super secure yet still, and I'm like, god damn. Um,
that's interesting.
Yeah, and then like the Broken Kingdoms, which I'm always fucking ranting about,
Mhm.
there's aspects of fate. So fate plays a huge role in it, and the pairs feel mate bondy, but it's not necessarily discussed that way.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I kind of
it's absolutely fate driven is the
yeah.
story.
And I think that can be more interesting, because to be fair, I also don't think it's like, oh, we shouldn't have themes about free will. Like, it's like one of those
Mhm.
universal things. You're gonna comment on that, but I just find people do it the same way. But I think it's interesting how, like what you're kind of saying, with like, and
Well, and
especially
it's even
also a
like
romance is different. I'm
mhm.
thinking more in terms of fantasy, but in a romance, the romance is the central, like,
Yeah.
so I should give that more credence too. Sorry, what were you
Well,
saying?
and like I mean it's even something that we wrestle with in like our not literary lives, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and people who are members of religious groups, right? Often talk about, God's will versus the will of man,
Yeah.
and and then even outside of those spaces, right? Fate and karma and karmic obligations versus free will. So like it's something that we wrestle with too. It's not like it's just only exists in fantasy, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that it's kind of human, I guess, to have stories that question those things because we question those things ourselves to some
Mm-hmm.
extent. You're like, oh, if I had made one different decision, like maybe I wouldn't have met my husband, right? Or you
Yeah.
start realizing like, oh, I could have made a couple of different decisions and I probably would have still met you, but just maybe at a different time. And so like kind of feeling that there's a little bit of something that's like, oh, maybe this is more than just coincidence that you meet
Yeah.
certain people, or when you do meet people and you're like, wow, I feel like I've been friends with you for like 1,000 years. That's weird. And so
Yeah.
there's a little bit of, I mean, that exists in everyday life, so it makes sense that it would show up in literature and be kind of blown
Yeah.
up in fantasy
Totally.
to be something that's much more, I guess, tangential, right? Or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
tangible or something. I'm using the wrong words, but whatever.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, so I I definitely want to use the element. I know that the fates play a role in my writing, but I haven't quite figured out the full lore or canonization of
Mm-hmm.
that system yet.
Yeah. I don't have anything like that in mind. I just have kind of a very loose magic system, kind
Mhm.
of soft magic, but um, yeah. I don't know if I'll ever have a fates thing, but it is interesting to me.
I mean, I like the idea of like oracles and like
Yeah.
seers and things like that. So like even if there's not fated mates, I think fate and
Yes.
like the sort of the marionette effect of some outside force playing on the characters. I think that that
Mhm.
plays out in a lot of stories. I mean, even Fourth Wing has that to some extent, right? That people can see into the future,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
there's like kind of some weird god stuff pulling some strings somewhere. Um,
Yeah. I think a good example is, or an interesting example of fate, like playing with fate, is like in Throne of Glass, Maeve, like rearranging, make people
yeah,
think that their mate is, and now she doesn't actually change the mate. She just like deceives about
yeah,
it.
yeah.
But they're, he's still able to like find his actual mate.
Hmm.
I think that's really interesting. What I reminds me of Fourth Wing is that the thing that I don't like about a fated mate situation is that it often produces an instant love.
Yeah.
Like, and that if your book is primarily a romance,
Hmm.
why are we being instant love? Like,
Yeah.
I guess fantasy is like it's not just romance, there's also these fantasy conflicts and stuff.
Hmm.
But come on, let's
Yeah.
draw it out a little
I
bit. I don't have to be all yearning, but this is a little too much, I
Yeah.
think, too often.
I worry that Gideon and Genevieve will fall for each other too quickly. I do have ideas of some, I don't know, third base spiciness in the first book. Um, and so like, and there's already, but like, I don't think that it's gonna be full on, like, no one's professing their love in the first book, right?
Yeah.
There's a bond. She say like there's life debts, there's bonds, there's trekking through the
Mhm.
fucking forest for forever, there's fighting
Mhm.
with each other, there's training with each other, there's
Trauma bonds.
conversations, and there's a weird like, does she like me, does she like him, and then
Mhm.
her being like, do I like him, does he like me, kind of weird, some kind of weird dynamics or whatever, because she's traveling with three dudes and that's different. um
Mhm.
and she starts out kind of, in a situationship with somebody else at the beginning of the book. And
Mm.
so, she's like, whatever. Um, but yeah, I'm like trying to make sure that I'm paced like, but like the pacing of like the spicy scenes are very much like after like the first moment where they even like really get to a point where like she says like she's into him is after the Valley of Vision,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
midpoint of the book.
Yeah, and I no, I think that's honestly, I mean, well, first of all,
But
I
when it's
think
like chapter 7,
yeah, exactly.
chapter 7,
But
you're
it
like, "Oh
sounds
my
like it's
god."
not that soon, but it could be early if it makes sense. It's just that I think far too often it feels the reason that people don't like instant love is not because they don't like the idea that someone sees someone and is in love with them. We all like the idea. It's very romantic, for love at first sight, or just knowing something like that. So that's a deep sort of spiritual intuition. The problem is that it usually just means like, wow, I just completely lost my train of thought. Okay.
Well, I think one, the readers don't get enough of the what makes people fall for each other, and then
Yeah.
you fall back on fated mates. Like, you don't have to have these moments that real love is built on because they're fated mates. And so you can kind of fast
Mm.
forward through some of that. So then the reader doesn't get the angst or the yearning or whatever, or
Yeah.
doesn't get like deep enough interaction with each other because you're just like, oh, mates, done. And you're like, I mean, okay, cool, cool.
Mhm.
Or it's veiled inside of enemies to lovers or some other trope, and then that story doesn't become like, that's the problem with Fourth Wing, right? If they were fated mates, fine, but it's veiled in starting out as, it at the very least, animosity to lovers, right? as
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
as foes, right? I don't know about full on enemies. um but yeah, I mean, it's sort of, people say that that's an enemies to lover, and you're like, it's like chapter 9 and all of a sudden they're like into each other. I don't know if it's that
Yeah.
early, but it doesn't feel like you get enough of the enemies part to have the payoff of the lover's side. And so I
Mhm.
think if you have a fated mate, if it's within another trope, you need to let that trope play out to its fullest and then give that split, right? Like, Gideon and
Yeah.
Evie aren't enemies, right? Like, she sees him and she runs to him immediately, right? She's like, I got to help this guy.
Mhm.
And so and there's a weird pole, and like she doesn't know what's going on, but she's just like, I can't just like let this guy die and drown. Like that seems fucked up. Like my mom's a healer. Like, it's just not in her to walk away. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't have to develop this, deep seated animosity towards one
Yeah.
another. If anything, it's a lot of reluctance, right? He's kind of, it's severely traumatized, right? And so he's working
Yeah.
through his own shit, but it's just them to work through. So it makes more sense.
Yeah.
Whereas it like when we get to Ren's, right? I can't make that happen too fast because yes, there's a backstory, but I need to get all of that backstory. You need the letters, you need this, you need
Mm-hmm.
the animosity, you need to see them hate each other, you need to see the tension before you get to a point where it makes sense. And when that shift happens, it needs to be like volatile,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I can't just be like, "Oh, I'm just going to wake up and be like, "Oh, I forgive all the things and I love you now." Like
Yeah.
I have this whole scene in my head that's like chaotic and dramatic, and they're screaming at each other, and she's
Mm-hmm.
like, "You're a fucking idiot and I hate you." And he's like, "Well, you're a dumbass." And like this whole thing, and then that's when like through actually talking to each other, which that is kind of a trope that like it's not miscommunication, there is a moment of not talking to each other, but you don't get that really,
Mm-hmm.
right? You get like, well, what the fuck happened? And
Yeah.
he doesn't understand something, and so he just walks away from her way back when. And so then the
Mm-hmm.
story starts many years after he's just like sent her a letter, was like, I don't want you.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
they already hate each other at the beginning of the book because he thinks that she did this thing and she has no idea why he left, but she fucking hates him because she's like, who breaks up with somebody in a letter? And but yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's plot holes for that too. Like there's problems with that, but I'm like, it can't just be like the next, the first few chapters are them hating each other, and then all of a sudden the next chapter they're like, oh well, actually the mate
Yeah.
bond, and everything's
Yeah.
just good. You're like, no, they got to work through their shit.
And people are way too overt with like I felt a strange draw towards this
Hmm.
person. Like people usually
Yeah,
hit that way too hard over the head. I
yeah,
do like a little subtle like I think it's interesting like maybe if you're suspicious of this person because you're like why there's something off about you. Like what there's
yeah,
something, and then you realize, oh, it's because our souls are connected or something. Like I think
yeah,
that could be interesting. And for the record, I think I think you can do a miscommunication trope the same way you can do fated mates. It could be so cheesy, and I think it's just so easy to fuck up both of
yeah,
those tropes as well as any trope is easy to fuck up because they're so known
yeah,
that you have to know your reader and how people are reading your book and know that like if you have to do the miscommunication trope the right way and
yeah.
because way too the thing people hate about it is that it feels like the writer just had to have some extra conflict and I
Hmm.
think same way with fated mates they're like the writer just had to like
Hmm.
yeah I don't know it just feels like forced contrived.
So with Ren's character, right? He grows
Hmm.
up with Ishani,
Hmm.
and until he's 8, and then he is sent to Gradonia, right, to be a ward of Gideon's dad, right? So he
Yeah.
grows up there. So then there's letters back and forth, right? And then he becomes sort of a spy master or something, right? He's living kind of as a ward prince. And so he's given the role of like an emissary spy something.
Hmm.
And so that takes him back home a number of times. So every time he goes home, right, he sees Ishani and like, they're friends and they write to each other and like all the things. And then it becomes this like budding romance and they fall for each other. And you're getting this through letters at the same time that you're getting chapters of them fucking hating each other. And then she is approached by the king of the Fire Islands to be his spy and to like seduce the his oldest son, so the heir, right?
Hmm.
And so Ren is in that kingdom, and he's glamored because Ren can glamour, so he's glamored, and he sees Ishani leave his brother's room in her night clothes, right? And so he's like,
Hmm.
she
Hmm.
chose him, like, she of course she did, everyone chooses my brother, like he's the heir, I'm the spare, like, and so his own internal bullshit with that, his trauma,
Mm.
And so then he goes home and he writes her a letter and says, I'm done with you and I don't want anything to do with you. And he doesn't speak to her again. And we see her once in the first series, in Gideon and Evie's series, because they have to go there. So we see her kind of as like she's there, but it's not a whole thing, right? It's just like, the whole fucking place is full of traitors. So we get this. She's there. He calls people traitors.
Yep.
And then at the opening of his book, right, the Fire Islands are dying. So the fire is dying. People are starving and whatever, freezing, blah, 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 blah. And so he is forced to go and work with her to figure out what's going on with the magic in his kingdom. And he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't like this kingdom. He doesn't give a shit about the kingdom. He doesn't want to be around her because he's like everybody else here, they chose him. And so like this whole time that they're kind of forced proximity, forced to be working together, you're getting how much like they can't kind of stand each other because she feels like he just ditched her with no no reasoning, and he thinks that she slept with his brother. And so as you're getting that whole story is when you're getting all of the letters, and then the chapter that shit shifts where they finally talk and she calls him an idiot for just not talking to her is like that opening chapter's letter is the letter that he tells her he doesn't want to be with her. And so like that's
I
the
like
pacing
that.
that I have for the book, is that like every, it starts off with like kind of, or there's like the letter that gives you some backstory, and then this huge juxtaposition. And as they fall more in love in the letters, they're completely out of love in their timeline. And then the second that he sends that letter and says, I don't want to be with you, is when things shift and they are back in love.
Mm. That's interesting. I like that like weird kind of like flip like two stories at once type of vibes.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But it can't happen too fast. And like,
Yeah.
yes, it's a miscommunication trope, but it's one that the like I feel like the readers don't necessarily have to suffer through because they don't know about it until you get there. Right?
No,
And so
but the
then when
worst ones are like they're right in front of each other and they're walking on this long thing and they're not gonna at no point during your 15-hour walk did you think to bring this obvious ass
yeah,
thing up. That's when it's annoying.
yeah.
If you're
Or
talking
when
letters, like you don't have a lot to you can't like
yeah,
put
yeah.
everything in there and you're.
And like
Yeah.
he's super excited to see her on that visit, right? He's like, I gotta get rid like I gotta do my mission first and do my little spy glamour shit. And that's when he sees her and he's like heartbroken, right? And then like the chapter that things change. The chapter before, he has to save her. There's like, they're attacked or whatever, and they're fighting something off, and he ends up kind of being the hero in that moment. And then he's pissed about it. And she's like, what is wrong with you? Like, why do you hate me? Like, you're mad that you, like, and he's like, I'm pissed because I want to hate you, but I also can't let you die. And so then that's when she's like, what did I ever do to you? And he's like, what do you mean would you do to me? Like, you were with my brother. And she's like, you're an idiot. I was not. I am not. Like, if you had just asked, I would have told you what the king asked me to do. And like, I've been working with your brother the whole time as a double of whatever, blah, 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 fucking court
Mhm.
politics. And like, so then you've kind of find out in the moment that they've had this, like, just not talking to like this communication issue, but then it's kind of settled at the same time. As
Yeah.
opposed to chapter after chapter of it being like, I'm not going to tell her. I'm not going to tell her. I'm not going to. You're like, oh my
It's
God.
so silly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or at least like okay, like in ACOTAR, there is a miscommunication trope with Rhys being Feyre's mate, but we don't know about it until after it's happened. And so it's still kind of annoying, but it's not, like the Rhys not telling Feyre that she's his mate is a miscommunication trope. But I think it's interesting because it's not like we're suffering the whole time. We only find out that there's been a
Yeah.
miscommunication like at the end, and then it's not like a big thing. It's still a conflict. It still drives tension, but it's not like this annoying thing where you're like, come on. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, actually, a lot of people are annoyed at Feyre for like being so mad about it. I was like, why do you care this much? But then it wasn't that big of it. It was like one chapter where she was like,
Yeah.
I'm mad. And then she was like, oh, well, it's pain.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but
Well, and I think a lot of it, I think it would have worked out a little bit better if the anger was written and tied a little bit more to fear. of what that
Yeah.
actually meant for her, and like, and some confusion because we don't get his explanation yet. So just like the confusion of like, is this because I was made? Have we always been mates? Or is this something that happened because I got turned? Like
Yes. Did he
some
like
of that
intentionally
internal,
do this because he's evil?
that,
Well, I don't
or
think she would
even
think
just
that,
like
but
is this something that's always been like this? Like, were you my mate when we were under the mountain, or is this after, or like how does this, because like, I feel like she should have more questions about how it works. Like she's
yeah.
human, right?
I
And so
mean,
like,
I know I'm super annoying with my questions, but geez.
yeah, I would have rather her been sitting in that cabin being like, what does this mean? Like, yeah, I have this, like, I just kind of broke up with Tamlin. I'm going to jump in bed with this new guy. That's kind of like, that's her struggle, right? But being
Yeah,
fearful of
she
it,
already
being like,
felt
what does that
guilty.
mean to actually like be mated to this guy? And like, I'm kind of broken. And, you know, do I feel this way? Or is this something that is just because I was turned and it's not real, right? And like have her
Mhm.
be apprehensive about that, or being like, oh, this is because I've become Fey. Like, is this the cauldron's doing whatever, or is it,
Mhm.
is it fake? Is this even real, kind of a thing? Um,
Yeah.
or her being scared of it, right? Like, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for Rhys? Like, what does this mean for his court if he's made it to me? Like, what's the implications of someone who was with Tamlin very publicly now is your mate? Like, how are people going to receive that? Is he going to be hated even more? Like, would have been kind of nice to have some of those thoughts in her head, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Because they're natural. It's what you should be
As
thinking.
opposed to just being like, he
It's
didn't
funny.
tell
I
me.
didn't
Well,
even
yeah,
mean to
because look
connect
how it
that.
worked out for Lucian. You can't just tell him right away. Like, that's awkward.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
And like, that's what didn't make sense to me is when she was mad. I was like, he couldn't tell you. Look at the position you were in. You had just sacrificed your life for Tamlin. He's gonna tell you right there on the balcony, oh hey, by the way, I know I just put you through
Mhm.
this nonsense, but you're my mate. Like, it didn't make sense that she was mad because I was like, there's not a good time to tell
Yeah.
this to you and not have it wreck you even more.
Lucian and Elaine is an interesting aspect of it too. Because that's where all the big ACOTAR debate is like, are you Elaine and Asriel, Elaine Lucian? I mean, I say Lucian or someone new, like, but I like
Mhm.
Lucian and I like the implications.
Yeah.
But I also don't love knowing, like, from interviews that she said she's interested in playing with the idea of mates, because then I'm just being like, oh, is this the one that you're? I don't know. I feel like it makes me like metagame too hard, and then I'm
Well,
like,
and
yeah,
and then it makes too where it's like, because they've already set it up where like Rhys has said that like the males feel the mate bond more,
strongest, yeah.
and the women can often accept it or reject it, and that sometimes they do, and it's like kind of not as big of a deal. So I think she's already set up a space for it to be very easy for Elaine to say no thank you and to choose Asriel. But I don't love that.
Yeah, well, it's funny because if she chooses Asriel, I kind of am more like, the only way that that's not weird is if it's because of some fucking fate fuckery.
Yeah, yeah,
Because it's weird that, like, I've kind of always thought, like, okay, if the three sisters are mated to the three brothers, then
yeah,
we better have some fuckery with, like, the mother and the cauldron and how they're trying
yeah,
to engineer, like, if, like I said, if we've like I've sort of we've chatted about this before, like, if we find out that actually mate bonds are derived by power and it's the universe trying to, like, bring order to whatever, or like the mother created this world because of this problem and all of it goes back to, like, we have to harness the most power, then I'm on board with the three sisters with the three brothers, because there's not some stupid ass reason like, just matched up nicely, and
hmm.
instead it's like, okay, that's interesting, but then it's like, okay, I guess you could do that,
But
like,
I
it's hard
don't
to pull that off.
I don't necessarily think that Lucian has to be vastly underpowered compared to Asriel, right? Like, if
Oh, I don't
anything,
even mean that. I just mean, like, that's why they could match up three brothers and three
yeah,
sisters.
yeah,
I think there could still be, because Lucian is very powerful, and so he might
yeah,
be a High Lord. You know?
yeah.
Yeah.
And he also has power from both Autumn and and possibly day court.
Yeah. I could also see something. It could be interesting if, like, maybe Elaine is fated to Reese because Feyre chose Rhys first, and then they were made after that, and then it was like that's kind of more interesting because it's like, oh,
Mhm.
the odds that your mates for these three sisters are all in the same place. That's weird. No, no, it's
Yeah.
because Feyre fucked
Yeah.
with fate when she became maid. Then I that's
Yeah.
also more interesting.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a lot of ways to make it lame as hell, and I really
Yeah.
hope that's
For
doesn't
sure.
happen. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean,
Well, and I've also seen a lot of fated mate tropes live in the space of like, um, it's about, and SJM kind of does this too, where it's like, oh, well, maybe it's chosen because it has the most like offspring compatibility.
mhm.
Um,
Well, Reese speculates that at some point, I think,
yeah, and I
but I
mean,
think it's
like,
not like for sure. But yeah,
well, and that's how like imprinting works in Twilight, right? It's like
hmm
whatever, and which Twilight is its own kind of problems, but right, where like you're imprinted on the person who has the biggest chance of like continuing on wolf powers or whatever. And even
hmm
with What Lies Beyond the Veil, it's about procreation as well, right? Like you're mated to whoever is going to be most compatible to have more children. Which I don't love that.
it gets into interesting territories.
Well, I think it just becomes too heteronormative.
Oh yeah, that
Um,
too. Yeah,
and I don't love the like mating for procreate. I don't like sex for just procreation, so I
yeah,
don't necessarily love that either.
yeah. I feel like it's like eugenicist territory a little bit too.
Yeah, well, and then Bonded by Thorns, right? She's mated to 5 different men. And so like
Yeah,
that becomes kind of a whole different, I mean, let's be real. The storyline of that is slightly more smut specific than plot specific, although the plot is not terrible. Um but yeah, and then there's like heart mates that are in the From Blood and Ash series.
uh-huh.
Um and that series I did not finish, but there's that as well. And so they talk about
What
it's
is a
like they call
heartmate?
it's a mate. It's
Oh,
like
it's
that
not
that
like
yeah.
because they like intellectually connected or had a
No.
heart to heart
No.
moment.
Nope. It's just like you're that there's like an actual like link bond in the heart. There are a lot of I have noticed with the fated mates tropes, the like physical bond from like heart to heart that manifests in some sort of like rope system, right? Like an actual,
Metaphorical,
yeah,
like
or
SJM
even,
talking about the bond.
yeah, or even that there's like something that like leashes two people together. That's part of a mate bond trope too. And I don't know if I love that specifically. But yeah.
Yeah,
And that's not just an SJM thing that happens in a number of fated mates. But then there's
yeah. I
also,
just
right,
don't know.
like I think that Broadbent does it well, right?
Are they
It's
fated?
not necessarily fated mates, but I mean like you could look at Rain and Araya and talk about their bond, and even more so um Asar and
Actually, they
Misha.
do very much feel fated because of the implications that it has for like bringing the world back together,
Yeah.
literally.
Well,
And
and
the
same thing with
big,
Asar and Misha, right? Like that they and then
no,
they
yeah, that's
actually
what I
get
mean.
bonded. Yeah.
Literally the world.
Mhm.
Plus, we've got Acacia,
Mhm.
and especially
Yeah.
that being the one that I mean, even in a way, that's like also um like her mother
Mhm.
was her acolyte, and so um there's even interesting things
Yeah.
with that because technically that brings together, humans and
Mhm.
you know
Well, and then
but
Acacia,
it
she's
seems
the
yeah,
goddess of fate, right?
yeah, 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 yeah. So it feels
Yeah,
like
and then Araya,
okay,
yeah, and Araya's mom was a seer, right? So you
hmm
have this like
pulling a lot of
mm,
strings.
yeah, you have the like seeing into the future so that something has to at least be slightly predetermined for you to be able to see the finality of a future. Um
hmm
yeah, I like playing with fate, especially when fate is a character. Um
Yes.
Right, I don't think that fate is so much, I mean, it is kind of a character, but it's more of a force in SJM, right? You have Cauldron Mother, things like that, but it feels more like a force.
Yeah.
Whereas in Broadbent, right, you have like Acacia is the goddess of fate. And
Yeah.
in the Broken Kingdom series, you have, right, they talk about the fates. They talk about them in terms, it's sort of a Viking romance, so it has that like, Old Norse, the three
Okay.
fates thing. Um and I don't think you ever interact with them specifically. But yeah, I like the notion, and so like that's part of like the way that I want to write is there's going to be interactions with the actual fates.
Mhm.
That there's implications to trying to alter a fate or
Yeah.
making the choice, right? That there's a moment when I have a character who I think is going to die, um, and is going to
Don't say it's
be
Cormac.
no, and is going to be given the choice of whether or not he wants to come back or not fully cross over or whatever.
Mhm.
And there's implications for that, right? That like people are trying to save him as he's dying. There's nonsense happening with that, but his soul, I guess, is in a limbo space where he actually meets with the five fates, because I have five because I'm obnoxious. And that they tell him, right, like it is your fate to die today, but it's also your fate not to die today, and you kind of get to choose, but know that there is a
Some
like
give and take.
there's a cost to going back.
Yeah.
And then like
Mm.
that kind of sets up later things.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I want the fates to be interactive to some degree.
Yeah. I like that.
Not quite to the degree that like Broadbent has you actually having like full on conversations and sexy time with gods, but maybe not sexy time, but I mean
What
it's
happens if you fuck fate?
I mean she
I'm
fucks the
just
sun god.
someone there. Surely there's books where it's like, yeah, I'm sucking on fate's dick. That I got railed by fate the other day. Like
Yep. Yep. Yep.
that
Yep.
that exists.
I got railed by fate. There is a book I will have to send you. This we might have to come out because this is
We are
blasphemy.
currently getting railed by fate, just for the record, in our real
I,
timeline.
I
Okay.
I I did not read this book that I'm about to mention. I will not read this book I'm about to mention, but there was like a big Kindle, here's all these free books, something or other, right? So I'm going through all of them, and a lot of them are like trashy smut that I
Mhm.
won't download because I need plot. But one of them was a Exodus retelling where there's a
Mm. Some snakes involved, huh?
homoerotic relationship between Moses and God.
Oh, they're gonna say Moses and the Pharaoh. That's some real enemies
Nope.
to lovers, or enemies
Yeah.
to lovers
And
to
I was
enemies.
like, I cannot read that.
That's kind of
I can't read it. There's
that's kind of
there's no way I
awesome.
can read it.
Babe,
Yeah,
trust
I was
me,
like,
that staff will turn into a snake. Babe, trust me, I got you. Babe, we're gonna turn
uh-huh,
the
uh-huh.
Nile into fucking blood, okay? I got
Yeah.
you.
He's like,
I can just
How,
imagine it.
how's this for a
God as
magic
like a
stick,
flamboyant
Moses?
gay man. It's kind of awesome. God the drag queen.
Yeah.
Let's do.
Drugs. Yeah. But I was like, okay, that's
Yeah,
different. Cool, cool. Can't bring myself to read that, but okay.
I kind of want to read it now.
It's probably because I'm worried that I would like it too much and be like, this was amazing, and then just be like, I can never ever celebrate
Read Exodus.
Passover ever again without thinking about
You
this book
can.
of homoerotic
Mm,
biblical fantasy. But yeah,
That's awesome,
I'll find it. I'll
dude.
send you a link.
I'm gonna write a Bible fan fiction. I'm gonna just do like God and David. It's already set up for you. David and
Oh
Goliath,
yeah,
enemies
for
to lovers.
sure.
That's some real enemies to lovers.
I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
that could be fun.
That's funny. Sorry, I don't
I'm
know why
like
that was
now I'm
said.
like
I
trying
think
to
it's
think of all
funny.
the wonderful enemies to lovers that could happen in
Jesus and
Bible.
the devil.
Oh, that'd be a good
And the
one.
story, it's like a prequel, and the story ends with the temptation in the New Testament, and he's like, "How would you do this to me?" It's like the ultimate betrayal, and he has to like
Yeah.
cast him away. Or
That's the
tragic
temptation
story.
is literally the temptation of the devil.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Um, that's funny.
We should cut all of this
Yeah,
blasphemy.
yeah, yeah. I would definitely will. Dude.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, Fated Mace is an interesting one just because
Mhm.
like yeah, it's kind of like it puts something into your story that you like
Mhm.
now it's there, but then I feel like, there are flexibilities. It's just it really depends on the writer being good and not
Mhm.
fucking it
Yeah.
up basically.
And I
Um
think that, right, one of the ones that pays off, I think Rhys pays off because of the Tamlin saga, right?
yeah,
Because you
and
don't
cuz
necessarily
it works up to it very
yeah,
very
and you gotta
yeah,
like kind of trudge through
pacing.
a lot of stuff before you get there, and then the payoff is in chapter 54 when you sort of get his POV of the
Mhm.
whole first book, and you see how it's
Yeah.
actually been working the whole time, and there's that payoff of like
Yes.
you get to see it when she realizes it, and that's great.
It makes the past more interesting, which is extremely hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that it pays off in Throne of Glass because you have this like very short, I mean, she falls in love with Sam. You have the Sam saga. Then
Yeah.
you have this like moment of something with Dorian. Then you have a Kale moment, which, by the way, the second read through, her and Kale are together for like 5 minutes. But anyway, so then they're falling for each other. And so you get these like other moments. And then even when you meet Rowan, right, he's talking about his mate already as being, dead. And so you don't necessarily see that coming. And so I think it pays off in that way because it's not something you're like, okay, well, maybe Rowan will be her love interest here, whatever, but you don't see the mate aspect coming. I think with
Mhm.
Bryson Hunt, it sort of pays off because again, you don't necessarily see it coming the same way. Um, and there's like a choice, but then it feels a little kind of it feels different because it feels like it's a conversation and a choice that they made. And so I don't know if it pays
Mhm.
off as well as the other two books. Um, I think
Yeah.
when it feels flat is when you see it coming, when they're talking about,
Yeah.
you know, mates all over the place. And then, second chapter in, you meet
Strange
the guy
attraction. I felt a
that you
weird
very yeah,
pull.
exactly. Um, so that's kind of part of it. Um, Yeah, I mean, and even with like what lies beyond the veil, right? The notion is that there is a veil that separates the human world from the Fey world, and that there are mates between humans and Fey, and that they're separated from each other, and they've been separated for 1,000 years or however long this veil has been up. And when the veil breaks, when it comes down, then they can find each other. And so when she embarks on this journey, she meets this person and like whatever. And so I think it took me maybe a handful of chapters into the two characters who will be mated that I was like, oh, clearly this is who that is. Like he's in human form and he's not a fairy, but like well, let's just get to the point where he reveals that he's Fae and that's her mate. And it kind of felt a little bit, but again, I'd already read a bunch of stuff. And so it wasn't super obvious the moment she meets him. And it wasn't even super obvious that that was going to be a love interest when she first meets him. But then, like, a few chapters and you're like, oh, this is the love interest. Okay.
Mhm.
And they've been talking about how this veil separated mates. So I'm like, oh, it's going to be her mate. And so I
Yeah.
think when you embed it into the story like that, that's when it feels right. Nowhere in the 30,000 words that I have so far have I talked about mates.
Yeah.
So there's a pull, right, that she has that she doesn't quite understand, but she
No,
also
I like
she,
that settled. Yeah.
she also chalks it up to being like, well, I wouldn't let anybody just die if I could help them. So of course I'm gonna go help them. So she kind of just like chalks it up to like that's my nature of trying to be a good person.
Mhm.
Um,
And I like, yeah, that's good.
and you don't see it everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Mates are rare.
Yes. I know a
And
lot of
like
them treat it like it's so rare, and then people have mates left and right. You're like,
yeah. I
all
mean, even
right.
SJM does that, right? It's
Yeah.
like there's a lot of
That's
mates
why I'm like,
happening.
you could say it's because there's some orchestration, but you kind of need that at some point. Oh, there's too many coincidences. If your
Yeah.
mate is 1 in a million, you have three 1 in a million chance, like right here.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Cool. Do we get to everything that we wanted to talk about?
I think so.
I do have a poem.
Ooh.
It's a poem I'm less familiar with, but this is like one of those well-known poets, kind of more current. Oh, I guess this came out in 2018. But this is a lot like I tend to the poems I've read have been very grounded, very narrative. This is going to be more lyric and kind of, there's this idea of a list poem and so a list poem typically is like, it could just be like a literal list of things and so it has this kind of interesting non-narrative feeling to it that it accrues a sense of something over
Mhm.
and I wouldn't say this is like a list poem traditionally, but it kind of reminded me of that. And yes, this is Kaveh Akbar's Forfeiting My Mystique.
Okay.
And shorter lines, but I'm just going to read through them. So,
Mhm.
Forfeiting My Mystique. It is pretty to be sweet and full of pardon, like a flower perfuming the hands that shred it. But all piety leads to a single point, the same paradise where dead lab rats go. If you live small, you'll be resurrected with the small, a whole planet of minor gods simpering in the weeds. I don't know anyone who would kill anyone for me. As boys, my brother and I would play love, me drawing stars on the soles of his feet, him tickling my back. Then we'd play harm, him cataloging my sins to the air, me throwing him into furniture. The algorithms for living have always been delicious and hollow, like a beetle husk in a spider's paw. Hafez said fear is the cheapest room in a house, that we ought to live in better conditions. I would happily trade all my knowing for plusher carpet, higher ceilings. Some nights I force my brain to dream me Persian by listening to old home movies and as I fall asleep. In the mornings I open my eyes and spoil the seance. Am I forfeiting my mystique? All bodies become sicker bodies. This is a kind of object permanence, a curse bent around our scalps, resembling grace only at the tattered edges. It's so unsettling to feel anything but good. I wish I was only as cruel as the first time I noticed I was cruel, waving my tiny shadow over a pond to scare the copper minnows. Rockabye, now I lay me down, etc. The world is what accumulates. The mouth full of meat, the earth full of meat. My grandfather taught his parrot the 99 holy names of God. Al Muzil, the humiliator. Al Warith, the heir. Once, after my grandfather had been dead for a year, I woke from a dream. I was a sultan guzzling flies from my crystal boot, with his walking cane, deep in my mouth. I kept sucking until I fell back asleep. There are only two bones in the throat, and that's if you count the clavicle. This seems unsafe, over delicate, like I ought to ask for a third, as if anyone living would offer. Corporeal friends or spiritual enemies, said Blake, probably gardening in the nude. Today I'm trying to scowl more, mismatch my lingerie. Nobody seems bothered enough. Some saints spent their whole childhoods biting their teachers' hands and sprinkling salt into spiderwebs, only to be redeemed by a fluke shock of grace just before death. May I feather into such a swan soon. The book of things not to touch gets longer every day. On one page, the handsome puppy bred only for service. On the next, my mother's face. It's not even enough to keep my hands to myself. There's a whole chapter about the parts of me that could get me into trouble. In Farsi, we say Jaya Shoma Kali when a beloved is absent from our table. Literally, your place is empty. I don't know why I waste my time with the imprecision of saying anything else, like using a hacksaw to slice a strawberry when I have a razor in my pocket. To the extent I am necessary at all, I am necessary like a roadside deer, a thing to drive past, to catch the white of, something to make a person pause, say, look, a deer. That's a long one. I forget how
Yeah.
long that is. But it's I feel like it has so
Sounds
many interesting
it sounds
images and
so depressed.
yeah, that's kind of what I love about it.
Yeah.
It's like it kind of encaptures like I'd say good rage. Like it's like a righteous anger, but also like a depressed righteous anger.
Mhm.
Like and yeah, there's a lot of sense of like loss of self And but just I love I'm a sucker for an image, so like that ending image of the white of the deer and like seeing yourself as like something people be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh look, one of those. Like I don't know, there's a really
I feel like
interesting
it
like
has also like the contradictions of life,
uh-huh.
of like live life to the fullest, but also here's all the rules of what you can and cannot do,
Yeah.
and then like big moments and then ridiculous moments, and like
Yeah.
things that are profound being paired with things that are not, like teaching a parrot all of the names of God, like something that's super profound and deep and connective being
That are
taught
now just being
to
mindlessly repeated.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. um
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the idea of like playing love versus playing harm, that's wild and insane.
Especially
um
like when you think like, kids, a lot of like play is actually like how they develop their brain, and it's
mhm.
like I don't know, it makes it seem like that's part of your required development is to play love and because it is. And
Yeah.
but it's just interesting, and I don't know. I think the walking cane is so creepy.
Mhm.
Because also I'm a germaphobe, so I feel like I'm picturing the gross end of the walking cane that touches the floor, and I'm like, ew,
Mhm.
take that out of your mouth. I'm gonna tell myself it's the other end. But
Yeah.
that really like gripped me and was weird. Um, I'm always a fan of a weird poem too. I feel like I bring a lot of weird ones, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
continue to do that. So there's
Fun.
that moment's definitely weird in that sense. I love the all bodies become sicker bodies line
Mhm.
because it's so sad. Because it's like, yeah, yep, that's exactly what happens.
Yep.
And the dead lab rats in the beginning, I'm like, yes,
Yeah, the
that
second you read
there's.
that line, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a
Hmm.
this." Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I think my first poem I read on this podcast was Wild Geese, which is so like, "Ah, we're all
Yeah.
one and we're all part of each other." And then now it's like, fuck.
I don't know why I waste my time with the imprecision of saying anything else. That is a problem of English for sure.
Uh, yeah, but yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, so many.
The saints part is a fun one.
Yeah.
Like they spend their whole childhood biting their teacher's hand and sprinkling salt into spider webs only to be redeemed by a fluke shock of grace just before death. That hits.
Uh huh.
Yeah. Cuz you're like,
Yeah.
really? They're full of nonsense their whole life, but then because this one moment of redemption and everything gets wiped away, like there's no sense in that. It feels like it's like the senseless nature of what our existence is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it definitely
Yeah,
feels
and
like
not
that.
finding that to be profound, not finding it to be inspiring, not
Yes,
finding
you're
it
bored by the
actually
depressing nature of life.
yeah, yeah,
You're not even that upset. You're just like,
and finding it to be sort of useless, that it's just
yeah,
something to watch.
yeah,
It's something to take notice
yeah.
of for a minute and then move on because it doesn't matter. And it like, has a sense of, like, performative nature in it, and then
Mhm.
it's a poem, which is also performative in and of
Yeah,
itself. Yeah,
yeah.
I dig it. Look at me knowing how to talk about a
'Cause you're a
poem.
human, you can understand things. Yeah. It's one of those poems you read, every time you read it, you'll be like, "Oh, oh." Like,
Mhm,
it's, some poems a lot of poems are like that. That's sort of the nature of poetry is that the more you and even, like, music is like that too. But this one especially because there's
mhm,
it's almost, like, too disjointed, like, there's so many different images.
mhm.
It's not like a clean, "Oh, this is a single metaphor." There's a lot here, and so they are connected, but they're hard to see how they're connected. Um,
Yeah.
and they're probably also not perfectly connected either, because I think that's part of the point. Um, and
Mhm,
that's disorienting. But I do think it's like the thing that keeps you reading is that it's so like interesting and weird and pretty that you're like,
mhm.
okay, but I don't know, it's very
And
interesting.
grotesque at the same time. You're
Yes.
like, "This is" yeah.
Yeah. So
Next week, do you
yeah.
wanna do a writing exercise next week so that maybe I can get out of
Okay.
my slump?
Yes, we're gonna heal
Cool.
you. We're gonna lay
Yeah.
hands just kidding.
Okay.
We're gonna
We'll do a Bible fanfic writing prompt. Just kidding.
Yes, we are gonna write. Oh my god.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, no.
Um,
We will not do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
I'll
can
try
definitely
to
do a
come up with.
writing exercise.
How about this? You try to come up with one prompt. I will try to come up with one prompt,
Okay.
and then we'll
Yeah.
try to do two.
Because I do think when you Google them, they have the lamest ones.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's obviously somebody out there has good writing prompts, but I feel like every time I look, I'm like, no, and then I just
Yeah.
write my own, and then I'm like,
Yeah.
this is fun. So yeah, let's do that. We'll bring each. Let me just write that down really quick.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Cool.
Keep reading.
Keep writing. See you next week.